Hey guys, how y'all doing?
Good, how are
Good. How are
you?
you doing today?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes,
I can't hear
definitely.
you.
Can you hear me?
Uh-oh. How about now? Can you guys say something?
Yes, hello.
Okay. Now I got you. I had the
Oh,
volume
good.
down, I guess.
Oh, and today we have to step out at 1:30, just to let you know in advance.
Okay, where you headed, to Riot?
Yes, we had a session this morning and it continues at 1:30.
Wow. Did you get a lot of homework?
Well, we turned in our homework, but I believe they're preparing to give us a bunch more.
Oh, wow. How many people are teaching? Is it just one person?
There are, I think, 7 to 8 people that will be interacting with us and leading us, in addition to mentors they pair with us. And in the cohort, there are 7 businesses in total,
Oh,
and we're
okay.
one of the 7.
Do they assign mentors to you, or do you pick the mentors?
Sounds like it's assigned. They have a 49 alumni, and they have a large chart of companies that they partner with. And so it seems like they're going to go through, and based on what we need, they're going to select the mentors.
Okay. Huh. Very interesting. Well, I like Tom. He's a nice guy. And didn't I hear somebody's going to shave his beard at the end of this or something?
He didn't
Not for
mention.
me.
Somebody was talking about it. I don't know where I heard it, but I don't know if it's a bet somebody made or something. I don't know.
I can ask him.
Yeah,
Maybe if that's a first to 5 million bet. Okay.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And today we're going to talk about something that is a little different. And basically, it's the subject of mental health and entrepreneurship. And I just want to share a story that I heard not too long ago. And the speaker was a guy who had just sold he's from North Carolina. He had just sold his company. I think it was for $500 million. So it was supposedly, really quite a success. And the presentation that he gave, he talked about what was going on that day with him. And on that particular day, he was laying on the floor and was unable to stand up and leave his house. He was so depressed and so whatever that he could barely move. And all he could do was send a text to his assistant on the team to let her know that he was in bad shape. And he ended up going, remember, he just sold for $500 million. So what I found most interesting about that is, we might associate these kinds of things with people who are unable to sell their company for 500 million. That would be maybe a little more understandable. So I've started looking into this more and more, and it turns out that successful entrepreneurs, and I don't have the stats, but are much more likely to deal with mental health issues. And a lot of it has to do with creating new processes and new organizations and ways of doing things that don't really have a roadmap. And sometimes that can lead you into a place that you're not emotionally or mentally prepared to deal with. And you may not even know that, right? It may not be something that it's on top of mind. So I want to take some time today to go over some stories. And this is from Techstars, who as you know, I have great respect for. So we're going to listen to a few little stories, 4 exactly, from people who have been in Techstars. And almost by definition, being in Techstars, you're quite successful. Just getting in that program is pretty ridiculous hard. And like I said before, I don't believe anyone from Eastern North Carolina has ever gotten into Techstars that I'm aware of. So with that, I'm going to share my screen, hopefully, and we'll see if it works. Hopefully everybody can see that okay. Entrepreneurship and mental health. So we're going to we're going to start with this guy, Brad Feld. And it just so happens that Brad is the founder of Techstars. And he's an incredible guy in many, many ways. He's written some incredible books. I highly recommend his books on entrepreneurship. It's just a wild story. And I think people were surprised when he came out and told this story. So let's give it a listen. And these are all relatively short.
I would say I was a pretty typical sort of nerdy, precocious kid. You know, I grew up in Dallas, Texas. My dad's a doctor, my mom's an artist. Right, there was a sense of being successful was important, and education was important, learning was important. I had a pretty deep introvert streak, so I was very comfortable externally. I was very social and had plenty of friends and, hung out and did things. But I really liked being alone reading a book. When I graduated from high school, I went from Dallas to Boston, and I went to school at MIT.
I think one of the really beautiful things about being friends first is you build this level of trust. We really knew each other and knew each other in different contexts.
I knew her well as a friend, and I found her fascinating intellectually. She was, incredibly smart, but also across a very wide range of things.
One of the things that I remember so much about college was he worked harder than anybody. And at MIT, that's saying a lot because everybody's really achievement-oriented. Everybody was the valedictorian of their class. Everybody had perfect SAT scores, and he still took twice the course load of the required course load and trained for a marathon and just really worked really, really hard. And I admired that. I admire a work ethic. So when you're friends and you admire a work ethic, that's one thing, and then in a relationship that can get to be too extreme. And we would bill 100-hour work weeks, which meant that all the administrative time and all the sleeping time wasn't on that. But it was extreme. That was extreme.
On today's fundraising segment, we have Brad Feld.
Brad Feld,
the man who does not need an introduction.
We were very successful as a business, financially very successful. Anybody on the outside looking in would say, what's wrong with you? Like you live in Boulder, Colorado, you got, nice house, you got a nice car, you got a great wife. It's easy to describe it at one level and hard at another. So the feeling for me of depression starts with what I could only describe as kind of a hole in my gut. It wasn't that I felt an emotion that was a negative emotion. I didn't feel sadness or sorrow, but it was almost the absence of joy. It's like, I've got this thing missing. I want this essential element of existence I don't have in my current existence. And I'm worried I'm not going to have it again.
The real crisis moment was we were on vacation in Sedona, Arizona, and he was driving the rental car, and he said he was considering pulling into oncoming traffic. So a really serious suicidal ideation. And I made him stop the car, and we traded places, and I said, I know some things, and I've studied some things, and I've done some therapy, and I've done a lot of work, but this is way out of my league. And when we get back to Boston, you're going to get professional help.
I remember feeling periods of incredible anxiety, and I had incredible shame around the idea that I would see a psychiatrist, and incredible shame around the idea that I would take medication, incredible shame around the idea that I might actually acknowledge that I was depressed. And there were very few people that I could talk to about this. Fortunately, I could talk to Amy about it. I could talk to my business partner, Dave, who was, even though he didn't really know what to do with it at the time, was incredible in terms of just being a supportive friend and partner. And what Dave would do is he wouldn't say to me, do you want to go for a walk? He would find out when I had a free hour on my calendar. He'd poke his head in my office and say, let's go for a walk. And I'd look at my calendar, I'd see I had an hour available. I'd be like, great. And we'd go for a walk. And a lot of times we wouldn't even talk about anything. He wouldn't start a conversation. We'd just walk. And sometimes a conversation would emerge, and sometimes I'd start to talk about something, and he'd build off of it. But he didn't make the walk, he didn't make the hour that we do a loop be about me or fixing me or how am I doing or what do I need. It could turn into that, and sometimes it did, and sometimes we just walked for an hour. Even when I was in a really low point, it was an introduction and a reminder to me of something that might be good, right? That might feel like joy against this touch point. And so doing simple things like that are very powerful.
You have to take care of yourself as well. It's the put on your own oxygen mask first. And that's my friends, being outside in nature, watching the sunrise with my dogs, just really intense self-care. It's a gift for me to be strong and happy, even when he's really depressed. I think my path is to be a truth teller, and Brad is a truth teller. Trust the journey. It's gonna turn out okay. It's gonna turn out great, actually.
Okay. Any initial thoughts or reactions?
I did. I think, when I was a kid, mental health really wasn't discussed. It was very taboo. But now with my children, my son just turned 18, my daughter's 21, it's becoming more and more acceptable to discuss it, and people are more aware of it. So I think we're in a better place to respond to people now.
I also see a lot of this with a lot of the corporate companies we've been involved in. It's kind of part of the personality set of people that are, CEO and really high energy, high drive. It's common. It's very common.
Yeah, so for 13 years, I was a compensation consultant, and I worked with large public companies and putting together what were called golden parachutes and anti-takeover plans for senior management and boards of directors. That was my job. I actually started the company, but I'll never forget the day I was in a room with several people, and one of the people in the room was the CEO of the largest bank in the East Coast. A major bank that you would know. And he was known as this incredibly brilliant CEO and driver. And he was laying on the floor on his stomach, pounding his fists on the floor and crying as the meeting took place. I was like, and they just said, yeah, he's, kind of had a meltdown. And anyway, that was my first exposure to this sort of thing, where somebody you think has got it all together, turns out, at least in some level, that they don't. So let's take the next step here. This is another person from Techstars. I think you'll enjoy what she has to say.
Never been one to follow the same path as everybody else. I was always known as like the wild one. Ball of energy, a little sassy. I'm not afraid to take risks. In fact, I probably chase those types of adventures. So I'm originally from Colombia, South America, and I Actually moved to the US when I was 6 years old. My whole family and I migrated here. My childhood's a little bit different because I grew up in a very different social class, I would say, as well. My parents just wanted a better life for us. The reason we moved to the US was actually for safety and security reasons. My grandmother was actually kidnapped when I was 5, and we spent about 8 months trying to get her back. We went a whole month actually before we knew where she was. And that was kind of the last straw for my dad and my family, as we needed to move. And it was really a matter of like having a better, brighter future. All of my siblings and I felt this feeling of we had to make our dad proud and make our mom proud, just because of everything they'd been through and everything that they had put themselves through just so that we could have a better life. Even since high school, like I was always the type of person that would stay up all night and study for tests because I had to get a good grade and make dad proud and all of that. When I moved to Denver, I met Kevin, and we actually met at a bar. The first thing that really stood out to me was just how kind and generous he is. Truthfully, I fell in love with his heart first.
I remember hearing that she was going on a camping trip with my friends, and I had just met her a few weeks before. And so I packed up all my things real fast and dropped what I was doing on Saturday just to go on this camping trip to see her. She didn't have a backpack, and she was just carrying everything in her arms. But she did it with a smile, and she was laughing the whole time. Like, wow, this person is willing to do new things, even if they're beyond her comfort zone.
Kevin was there from day one. Everything really happened super fast. Like within that first year, I had met Kevin and I had met Jackie, who ended up being the co-founder at Reveler. People should have the right to feel safe. And with Reveler, you are now empowered to live your life to its fullest potential. At the time, it was just the two of us working on it, and we were kind of figuring it out from scratch. We were solely driven by passion, right? So we were, in our minds, like creating a product that, for lack of a better word, was supposed to save the world, right? Like, how do we keep people safe? We had people write in and tell us how important our product was. And I think that just made us fight harder, but also that led to a lot more stress. Yeah, there was a lot of pressure to not let people down. You know, there was definitely a lot of great things that came from it, but it did feel like I was a little bit like suffocating myself in a way. It felt like I had to keep going, like trapped a little bit. Sorry, you just made me like tear up. Sorry, you're right, I haven't processed. It's been still really hard. You know, I did lose friendships. I lost a lot of time that I could have had with people. But in that moment, I completely had prioritized the company and the mission and everything we stood for. And a lot of people say, right, like, don't take it so personally, but it's super hard because you just given so much to that company. So my co-founder was actually really good at it. She would look at me and be like, you're sick or you're tired, like go home, take a half day, like go rest, like go take care of yourself. But a lot of times, like, it's hard to catch those moments for yourself.
The work world started bleeding into the home life. I would say I felt very alone. All you really want to do is see the person you love, but you also know that that person is trying to start a business, save that business, save jobs. I just knew I hadn't seen Andrea, the real person inside of there, for quite a bit of time. That person had been sucked into the laptop.
And my husband actually looked at me and he closed my computer and he was like, you need to go to bed. Like, you look exhausted, you look like you're not well. And that was a pretty big wake-up call for me, right? Like, do I need to work this late? Like, how can I be with you if I'm not with you? In a lot of situations, I was there physically, but mentally, my head was always somewhere else.
We know we're supposed to take care of ourselves, We know we're supposed to work out. We know we're supposed to eat healthy. We know we're supposed to go on walks, do art. But it simply felt like there was never time to do those things because we would be letting someone down if we took time for ourselves.
Starting a company is not easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. You know, make sure that it's something that you're passionate about. You still get stressed out, right? Like, it's life. Life is meant to be a little stressful. That's how you become a better person and how you get to know yourself better. When I compare myself to how I feel now versus back then, I was definitely overworked, overstressed. I've learned that now, right? Like how important it is to actually spend time with the things that matter the most to you, so you can continue to be your authentic self without letting stress and burnout take over.
Hi, man.
I was born March 2nd, 1975 in Sioux City, Iowa. I was kind of a happy-go-lucky kid. And then my dad left. And after that, I started to get more quiet, more shy, and that kind of followed me throughout my childhood. So middle school, the anxiety really ratcheted up. There were fights daily, and I had kind of this disposition of when I saw violence, it would make me sick to my stomach. I survived middle school and made it to high school and started to come a little bit more out of my shell and break out of the anxiety a little bit. I was heavily involved in things like band. I did start to play soccer, so I played on the high school soccer team. Yeah, music was kind of my thing. So we had different garage bands. I played bass because nobody else played bass. Everyone wanted to be a drummer or a guitar player, and I was like, oh, I can get a lot of playing time if I'm a bass player. Things really started to change for me, though, when I got to college.
And that's where I met Matt, was on the first day of college. We were in a small orientation group.
We were supposed to go around, use an alliterative term to introduce ourselves.
So I said, I don't know, I'm Jumpin' Janie, I guess. Even though I'm like super shy.
I couldn't quite see her. She was kind of hidden behind some other people. It got to me and I couldn't come up with anything, so I said, I'm Measly Matt.
And I'm like, who's that?
You know, we're supposed to say something that we're into, and so I said, I'd like to do art. And so I see this head poke around another person and say, what kind of art do you do?
And he said, oh, you wouldn't understand. I thought, like, this is so on, buddy.
Like my 18-year-old self, I just want to go back and smack him. Luckily, I didn't ruin it.
It was really like I met my best friend, and we both felt like we had been searching for this person the last 18 years of our life. And about a year and a half later is when we got married.
She is strong beyond belief. She is so incredibly compassionate. You know, if love was a currency, she'd be one of the richest people on the planet.
4 years into our marriage, I think it was, he started to withdraw. He no longer wanted to do anything, wanted to sleep. He started to self-medicate with alcohol.
So the anxiety got to the point where, you know, I was afraid to go places. You know, I'd say to Janie, oh, let's just stay in.
He started doing kind of like ritualistic things, locking the door differently, turning the water on and off.
The anxiety would kind of kick in, and then I would do a ritual to try to combat the anxiety. And it would work, but it was a temporary fix. Then when I was 25, I decided I wanted to get over my fear of heights, so I was going to go skydiving. The day of our jump, I'm super excited. I was playing music on my headphones, and I couldn't wait to jump. And we get to about 3,300 feet, and the instructor opens the door, and I'm the first one to jump. So I look out, and I look down at the ground, and think, there is no way I can do this. This terror came over me. As soon as I let go, my heart felt like it was going to explode, and I couldn't breathe. What I didn't know was I was having a panic attack while skydiving. Then about a week later, I'm at work, and I'm talking to one of my coworkers, and out of the blue, I have a panic attack. It feels exactly how I felt jumping out of the plane. I'm starting to notice I'm having at least one panic attack a week. And it gets to the point where I'm starting to have a panic attack a day. Then I'm having multiple panic attacks every day. My obsessive compulsive disorder gets really out of control because one is kind of feeding the other. So I'm developing more rituals. I notice, like I can't get out of the shower unless I turn the knob off a certain way.
He didn't share a lot with me. He was very withdrawn, but he did share that he was like having some thoughts that were very concerning to him.
So what my brain would tell me to do is very violent things. And me being just who I am, someone who hates violence, it was probably the most disturbing thing for me. So 2 weeks before my 27th birthday, Janie comes to me and says, I'm pregnant. And then I really start to spiral out of control.
The day I told Matt, I guess I just imagined he would scoop me up and spin me around and it would be this super amazing time, like super special moment for us, and it wasn't. And I think that's the first time I realized there's something really wrong.
I wake up the next day. I shouldn't have gone to work, but I did. I drove myself there. I sat down at my desk, and it was a Friday, and a lot of people were coming with, where are my projects? How, is this gonna be done next week? I was a graphic designer at the time. And I just stood up, turned around, and looked at my boss and said, I need to leave right now or I'm gonna hurt someone. And she just gave me this blank stare. And she said, okay. So I walk out of the building and I call Janie and I said, I need you to meet me at the hospital.
He seemed really kind of numb and like a shell of himself. I really thought that they would take him away and he would never come back the same guy. But it was also like the best day of our lives because he was given a new chance.
The doctor who was there at the time said, we're going to put you on the right medication and we're going to monitor you the next few days. You're not going to spend the rest of your life here. You're going to get better. And that's the first time I had hope in a very long time. That alone was a huge weight that was lifted off of my shoulders. And 3 days later, I walked out of the hospital.
He was completely different the next day. He woke up with hope. There was like sparkle in his eyes that he hadn't had in years. He looked alive again.
So after the hospitalization, they set you up with a therapist and a psychiatrist. So mindfulness became a big part of how I got healthy because through the act of meditation, sitting on a cushion, I could actually watch my thoughts. And through that process, I understood that my thoughts are not who I am. But if you just watch them passively and become an observer, they don't take control over you.
I got to witness firsthand all those layers he had been putting on himself to protect himself were starting to come off. He was cracking open and the light was shining out. And it was just really amazing.
It fundamentally changed who I am for the better. There is a stigma around mental illness, and we need to break that stigma. We need to understand, all of us together, that it's no different than having any other medical condition. It'll still bubble up. There's moments, 17 years later, that I still have anxiety, especially before I'm, to go on stage and give a speech. But I've learned that I can channel that energy. I can change it from one of fear to one of excitement, because they're kind of the same. One of the most powerful gifts you can give to yourself is to get healthy, and it's okay to ask for help.
Any thoughts, ideas? One of the things that I think, go ahead, somebody's speaking up. Chris, is that you?
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to get rode down in the depression stuff. You never know from one day to the next.
Yeah. What I was going to say that caught my eye, you know, and I'm really glad in this case this guy's outcome was so positive. But the other side of it is it's not always the case, as you all know. So I don't know why I feel the need to point that out. I guess I'm a bummer, but I think that is reality as well, and we can't just pretend. So this last one is a professional who's going to kind of sum up what we've seen, and I hope you find it as helpful as I did.
I'm Dr. George Iliopoulos. I'm a psychiatrist.
Hi, my name's Jean Ross Marin. I'm a licensed psychologist.
My name is Janine Dianabal. I'm a psychologist. Entrepreneurs obviously are in a very kind of high-achieving, pressure-filled world.
And they do a fair amount of self-neglect sometimes when they're in the middle of all of that. And they keep plowing forward. They don't want to admit that there's something wrong going on.
Sometimes that's great because it inspires creativity and innovation, but sometimes it can lead to a tremendous amount of psychological stress that can accumulate and also lead to burnout. Burnout is related to anxiety and depression, but different. I think burnout is usually related to the workplace specifically, where there is this demand for work to produce, and resources kind of don't always meet the demand to be able to execute the product. So one can constantly feel behind, right? That's the essence of burnout. Now, a side effect of that burnout then, that's feeling like I can't keep up, can then be anxiety and depression. So it can kind of stem from the burnout.
There's a list of the top 5 reasons for disability. Depression is in the top 5. And, so that's right along with heart disease and diabetes. So this is a major cause of disability. 1 in 10 people will have depression in the past year. And the lifetime prevalence might be more like 20%. So 20% of people, 1 in 5, might have a major depression at some point in their life. So it's fairly common.
18.1% of adults have an anxiety disorder, and actually 33% of youth, so from ages 12 to 18, also have an anxiety disorder.
Stress and burnout can impact all areas of life. Some of the earliest signs are very kind of subtle, innocuous things like difficulty sleeping. And that could get normalized because many of us have difficulty sleeping at different times. But when it is chronic, pervasive, that is certainly a sign. Distracted or unable to really focus and concentrate to drive tasks to execution. Difficulty in interpersonal relationships. A lack of ease or even joy in relationships that maybe was present before.
In a depressive episode, you have, for a significant period of time, a depressed mood. You're sad, you're down in the dumps, you're irritable, you're anxious. And a big feature in depression is a word called anhedonia. Anhedonia is an inability to experience pleasure. And that's, hedonism is pleasure, anhedonia is without pleasure. And that's an important thing that humans need. It's what drives us forward, helps us to make decisions, go towards goals. And if nothing feels good, it can be really hard to push yourself forward. Depression can also be associated with difficulty with proper nutrition and eating. And some people just stop eating and lose a significant amount of weight. They'll complain about things like, I can't concentrate. I don't have the energy level that I used to have. Definitely a tendency to be really self-deprecating. I'm no good. I'm worthless. I can't do this. I might as well give up. Things like that can come up.
The difference between normal stress and anxiety is really about the level of impact. If it's interfering with your ability to live, love, laugh, and learn. There's all sorts of very, very physical symptoms. You feel like you need to run away or maybe fight, or you actually freeze. It's your body getting you ready for fight or flight. They have a lot of stomach aches or headaches. Or somebody might feel like they can't focus, they feel kind of jittery, they feel overwhelmed. Some people might have full-on panic attacks that literally feel like you're having a heart attack.
There really is stigma associated with mental health issues. We don't talk about things like this. You have to be tough and on top of things, and you can't show weakness or admit weakness at work.
There is no shame in being burnt out. I think there's such a cultural norm, particularly in the entrepreneurial community, of keep going. There's work to do. This isn't that big of a deal. I've got this, I can keep going. So I think it really is the minimization or denial. I think friends, family, partners are hesitant to intervene with someone with burnout for fear of coming across as judgmental. And so the partner or friend doesn't want to contribute to the stress by calling out the stress. So often it's a cycle that feeds upon itself, where if nobody's kind of talking about it, the person isn't also getting any help. All we want to do is invite balance. So rather than talk about how hard they're working, how they're never there, maybe we invite, I'd love to have lunch with you today. Is there any way you could meet me for an hour?
I think if you're genuine in your care and concern, I think that's, that comes across, and that's what's honest. You're being honest, you're not being too intrusive. Trust your judgment, trust yourself. If you're really worried about this person, especially if you're worried about safety, then it's important to share that responsibility, talk to people around you, and sometimes you might even need to call the authorities if you're truly worried that you're not going to see that person the next day.
Because it is really helpful to people to feel like somebody cares about them. They're not alone, that you're normalizing it. Like you're approaching this like you would approach other things. Because this is not our standard practice, it kind of goes against social norms, and it feels like we're being intrusive or nosy, to remind yourself that it's actually helpful.
I think often the key is to admit that we're not perfect, that we might be struggling, and show vulnerability in that way, so that we can then actually replenish ourselves by admitting that. Then if we do that and we start rebalancing things, chances are we're going to come back to our work life in even more of a powerful way. But oftentimes we have to first admit that what we might be doing isn't working.
Good things can come out of situations where people have been in really dark places. And, human history is just full of stories just like that. And you can be the next story like that. And if you find that you're really struggling, go get help and work on it, and you'll get better.
All right. Any reactions? Final thoughts?
I think it's one of the things I think is just very, very important to have people near you that definitely have your best interests in mind, and somewhat of an accountability partner. But just listening, it almost sounds like a spiritual journey as well. And depression, anxiety being an illness, it doesn't discriminate based upon your level of success, however a person or individual defines success. And just to look at it that way is.
Yeah, that's good. I will encourage anyone in the class, if you are having any trouble or someone who does, that you reach out to me privately. I'll do what I can to help you, or your friends, family. It's something that I think is really important, and if I can help in any way, please don't hesitate. One of the things that I've been involved in fairly recently is I have a brother-in-law who suffers from a really bad thing called cluster headaches. And cluster headaches are the most severe form of headache, way tougher than migraines. And it only affects a very small percentage of people in the population. So the pharmaceutical companies have never come up with drugs to deal with it. But there's about 300,000 people in the United States that suffer from them. So there's a lot of issues associated with it, the physical pain, but also the resulting mental issues. And so one of the things that I started looking into for him, or because of him, I should say, was psilocybin mushrooms and other kind of psychedelic treatments, because Johns Hopkins had a clinical trial going for people with cluster headaches using psilocybin as the treatment, and they were having really incredible success. And I knew that my brother-in-law, his instinct would be, bullshit, I'm never taking a psilocybin mushroom. Talk about a straight arrow, you know. So I became immersed in learning about it and spending time getting up to speed as much as I could. And I was able to work with him, and he actually did go to the clinical trial at Johns Hopkins. I'm sorry, it was at Yale. Johns Hopkins also has a clinical trial, but he got into the one at Yale. And although it's still a while before we know what will happen with the cluster headaches, other related symptoms are much better after him having gone through that. And about 3 months after he went through the trial, we went to visit him, his sister, my wife, and myself. And we sat down at the kitchen table, and he told us what he had learned from the journey. I have, even thinking about it blows me away, because the level of emotion and understanding a lot of stuff in the family, a lot of stuff that has just been around for a lot of years. It was the most incredible account I have ever personally heard in my life, of him describing what he learned on psilocybin. So, you know, I'm very aware of stuff going on in this space, and you know, I've never done psilocybin mushrooms, but I have a feeling if I get the chance, I probably will. So even though I think I'm doing okay, the stories that he told made it very intriguing. So I'm not an advertisement for mushrooms. I'm just kind of telling you what I've experienced. So any other thoughts or questions that people have before we call it a day?
Yes. So one of the things that I've learned when I've been having problems is that when my priorities get out of whack, that's when things start to go wrong for me. And so once I put those back into order, the order that I feel that they should be in, things start turning around for me. So it's really key to recognize that when you're starting that spiral out of control,
yeah,
to break free of it by getting things back into your prioritization.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And I also encourage that, you know, if that's happening and you aren't able to get back on track, you know, don't hesitate to reach out. It's no shame whatsoever, particularly today, nowadays. And most of you all are, you know, all of you are entrepreneurs. You're on your own to a great extent. So don't hesitate to reach out, whether it's me or someone else. Certainly happy to connect the dots. So we actually have at ECU, we have a medical school, and we actually have a really good group of people. And I know the head of it really well. I've worked with him on projects for cities that have to deal with people like taking their clothes off in the middle of the road and stuff like that. So he's a good guy, and he's available to us as well. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, we'll tune in tomorrow. You know, some of you know our friend, Mr. Allen, who will be speaking to us about advertising, and a much lighter subject. I hope we don't get depressed talking about advertising, but it might happen. Who knows, right? But thank you, everybody, I thought this was, for me, I enjoyed it, and I hope you did too.
I did. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.